To have you with us, 11 away from 8 o'clock, so you may be powerless, but expect to pay a lot more for the no electricity we're getting in the near future. Just to remind you, if you just joined us, the breaking news, bottom of your screen, we are going back into stage 2 blackouts from 9 a.m. this morning. We're being Eskommed once again. So speaking of Eskom and the energy regulator, Nersa, they've reached an agreement on how to determine tariffs, and this all gets very complicated. Let's try and unpack it. The power utility is looking for an increase. Listen to this. They want an increase of 32% in April next year and a further 10% in 2024. So when you add those together, Brendan Slade from OUTA, we're close to 42% in the next 2 years. And we imagine, of course, how angry everyone is, because we'd happily pay for the power, but the problem is we don't really get any, do we?
That's correct. Thanks for having me, Gareth. It's raining quite heavily outside, so touch wood that the coal won't get wet this morning. Just to differentiate between the two processes we are talking about this morning, on the one hand, we've got the court order, or can we say the settlement agreement reached between Nersa and Eskom, and that relates to the incorrect valuation of Eskom's regulatory asset base. So on the other hand, we've got the application that Eskom approached Nersa in terms of earlier this year for the increase of 32% for the tariffs for the coming financial year. And that is in relation to Eskom's multi-year price determination process, which coincidentally is also a tariff methodology application. So if we add all these together, at the end of the day, it will be the consumer that bears the brunt of all of this. And unfortunately, we have seen that Nersa is not correctly playing its role as a regulator. It's being bullied by Eskom left, right, and center. And Eskom uses this opportunity to just seek additional heightened tariffs as the years come by, obviously at the cost of the consumer.
Oh, it always comes down to the consumer. I suppose, Brendan, the other side of this coin is that I think it will be widely recognized that Eskom does need money just to try and keep the power on as best it can at the moment, which is not all that often if we're honest about it. But there is an argument that they're going to need more money in order to improve on services. Does that hold any water for you?
No, sure thing. But at the end of the day, the consumer cannot be held accountable to fit the bill for Eskom's misfortunes and mismanagement of its power fleets. So on the one hand, we have Nersa that's losing legitimacy as a regulator due to its track record in court. It gets blown out of the sky every time. It gets court orders against it. And that's a bill that the consumer also has to fit. But at the end of the day, bad methodologies result in bad decisions. And it creates energy insecurity, uncertainty, and it's detrimental to investors. It will deter investors from investing in much needed electricity infrastructure going forward. And having to defend the bad methodologies and miscalculations, it's something that the taxpayer, in addition to heightened tariffs, must fit the bill for, unfortunately, as well.
It really does all come down to the consumer in the end, because all of this is going to cost money. However, what do we now do as a society, you as OUTA in a case like this, when you have Eskom who says they need this money to simply maintain the infrastructure they've got now, and as you suggest, Nersa is being bullied by Eskom. These are two massive entities. What do we do as South Africans or organizations like yours? How do you take this on? How do we begin to change this?
So the first step in the right direction is to consider and accept that we are currently in an electricity crisis. We need to fix the issues of energy security. And it's not even a matter of debate, but we need more independent power producers to come online as soon as possible. We really need the energy regulator to act in terms of the court orders that is granted against them. We need an overhaul in the tariff methodologies, and we do need public consultation on this, because Nersa and Eskom cannot be the only role players in determining what calculations need to take place in order for tariffs to be approved in the future. So the most important thing in this current situation is the installation of installing new generation capacity through IPPs Eskom entering into additional power purchase agreement with those IPPs, that will then mean that Eskom does not necessarily have to own that asset, and that cost of the asset will then not necessarily reflect on the tariff application. That will be a cost borne by the independent power producers. So the more the merrier, actually, because the more independent power producers there are in the mix, there will be greater competition, and there will then be a demise in Eskom's market dominance, which will in turn also press down the tariff going forward. So competition is very much needed in this space.
And I think many people would agree with you as well. Just if you can, a yes or no, Brendan, I know it's a difficult question. Do you suspect it's going to happen, though, before April 2023? I suspect you're going to say no.
Well, just to go back a few weeks or few months ago, OUTA did submit its objections to the MYPD application for the 32%. Nersa gave an undertaking to give the public an answer before Christmas this year. So obviously this decision by Nersa is a decision in terms of PAJA, the Promotion of Administrative Justice Act. And if they go through with the decision, if they give an approval based on its irrational calculations, and the decision being unlawful, there's certainly room for OUTA and other civil action organizations out there to consider setting that particular decision aside going forward.
Well, let's see what Santa has for us as far as Eskom and blackouts are concerned. Brendan Slade, I appreciate the time. Hope we'll speak to you again in the near future. Brendan is from OUTA, Free Project Manager for the organization.